Hey, what's up, everybody? This is my first live, so I have no idea how any of this works. I have no clue. This could blow up in my face. It could just go nuts. Like I said, I have no idea what I'm doing with this, but we're gonna have a little bit of fun. And as it is my first live, I have no idea how many people are going to be watching this thing. I have no idea how to interact with anybody. Um, I guess we're going to grab some comments this way. So, anyway, for those of you guys that don't know me, my name's Ken. Most of you that are probably watching this live are followers. I've got about a quarter million followers. I never in a million years ever thought that would happen. Hello, Chris Adams from Alabama. Hello, Steve. Um, this is awesome. so, so anyway, I wanted to start the first live, I guess, filling people in a little bit. A lot of folks watch my content, which is basically Christian in nature, but not necessarily religious. And they're curious about how I came to the knowledge that I have my personal walk, stuff like that. So, oh man, thank you, Chris. That's amazing. And hello, Joseph from Bristol, England. We just moved from the UK recently. Um, hello, Dave from Buffalo. So let me just kind of start. Um, Let me just start with the question everybody always asks, right? Why do you film your videos in a car? Well, obviously, this is not in a car. I'm actually in my home. I'm in my bedroom, which I wish I could like pan it around. It's basically just like stuff in boxes and stuff. We just moved to Puerto Rico, and so we don't have a lot of stuff set up. Like I don't even have the paintings hanging on the wall yet. It's just leaning on the back, leaning on the back of the chair. Uh, so why do I film videos in the car? Um, it's a long story. No, how all that really started. Um, so for years, for my family, most of you know my family recently moved to Puerto Rico to start a community farm project. But before that, we were living in Wales, UK. We were in Wales for about 5 years. And when we were in Wales, we actually had a really small cottage. It's 3 bedrooms, maybe 1,100 square feet max. Tiny, tiny stuff. As far as what most people in America are used to nowadays. And at the time, with our 4 kids, they were very young. So I started this TikTok account about a year and 8 months ago. And what ended up happening uh, is that I would run to the car. I had an office, right? So the Gathering Place, which was a charity, it still is a charity. It's still going. I had an office there, but I really wanted to reserve that for the classes and the workshops and all that kind of stuff that I do. It was definitely a more formalized setting. But the car was kind of like an easy escape. So if I was at home, I didn't really have an office. I didn't really have an area that I could go to. So I have young children right now. Their ages are 9, 7, 6, and 4. But at the time, subtract 2 from all that, you really young kids that they're loud. Let's be real. You got a little tiny house. You don't have a special place for things to go. It's loud. So I would run to the car to do my videos, and that kind of became the thing, right? And so I'm doing videos in the car, and what I began to notice after basically a year of doing things in the car, what ended up happening is that uh, when I did a video that wasn't in the car, it wouldn't get any views. I mean, it's not all about views and stuff like that. I mean, you can't as a content creator. Oh, thank you very much, sweetie girl. That's amazing. As a content creator, you really can't get caught up in, oh, how many views is this getting? How many views is it? Because then all of a sudden you're making content to get the views instead of making the content that's near and dear to your heart. And what I was noticing is that I did a split test. Basically, I did a test with videos in the car, and I did a test with videos outside of the car. Same topic, same subject, same basic flow, same information. And the videos that were shot in the car ended up getting like, I'm not kidding, guys, like a fifth of the views. So that kind of became the catch thing. Like when people were scrolling, oh, it's the dude in the car, and so that's why it's in the car. And in Puerto Rico, that is a significant challenge because cars when they're left out in the sun, they get hot. It's sunny all the time here, like all the time, and it's warm all the time. It's hot all the time. So I literally to shoot a video in the car here, I have to wake up. Well, I usually get up about 4 or 5 a.m. every day anyway. But I actually have to go shoot the car. I have a small window where I could shoot the video in the car. And if I miss it, there's no video for the day because I can't sit in a car that's like 1,000 degrees. You know what I mean? So with all that being said, that's why I film videos in the car is because I can literally film the same content, not in the car. Nobody sees it. Like you can seriously go to my profile and scroll and look at videos that aren't filmed in a car setting. I filmed one in South Africa. I was in South Africa back in August, and I filmed. Actually, I didn't have a car, so I had to actually film a bunch of them. We were staying we were working with an amazing church, and we went on this safari thing, and where we were staying actually recorded, I thought, some amazing content. And what was funny is that was the first time I ever shot videos with an audience that wasn't in a classroom setting. So I had folks that were sitting around like watching me record these videos, which was kind of weird, right? Yeah, but they're watching me record these videos, and they're like, "Man, yeah, like that's a really good video. Like it's amazing." Nobody watched them. I'm sitting there with like a floral shirt, and I'm like doing it. Nobody watched it. Nobody cared. But the minute I got back in the car, when I got back in the States, shot a video, tens of thousands of views. It's a weird thing. So people kind of get used to seeing you in a certain way. Because on TikTok you just scan so fast, bam, 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 and then people are gone. So that's why I shoot videos in the car. Well, long story, way too short, or short story, way too long. um, just so you guys know, my videos, when I shoot videos, like a lot of times, like people ask me, how do I shoot my videos in the car? How do I pack so much information and set into such a tiny amount of space? It's kind of like what I'm known for, right? Like just like taking like a book of stuff and like shoving it like right into 8-minute video. One way I do that is I overfilm. So for every 8-minute video that you see, that video probably took about 16, 17 minutes. And what I do is I go through and I cut the filler. And there's a lot of filler. And even sometimes when the video is done, there's a lot of filler, but I try to engage people as much as I can and kind of bring them in. You know what I mean? And so, when I do a video, just know that the video that you're actually seeing is basically has been trimmed way down. I try to, trim as much. Good morning, Dakota. I try to trim as much as I can out without removing the story. You know what I mean? I could just sit here like an automaton and go in 325 at the council of Nigeria, uh, I could do that. Who wants to watch that? You know what I mean? There are plenty of other creators that are amazing at relaying information that way. And that they're fantastic at what they do, and they do it in a way that is engaging and is packed with knowledge and all that sort of stuff. Myself personally, what I like to do is to kind of put a story to it. I'm a storyteller by heart. That's what my background is actually in. My degree is in English. My bachelor's is in English lit, and I just read. I just consume mass quantities of information. Hey there, Squishy. How are you? So with the way that I do it, but my heart is in telling the story behind what it is that I do content about. Like, for instance, I'm getting ready to shoot one on Valentine's Day because we've got Valentine's Day coming up. A lot of people don't know the roots of Valentine's Day. You know, they join it. They're, oh, you know, it's a pagan holiday. It's based on Lupercalion, you know, all that sort of stuff. And that could be argued, but there's also a lot of Christian background to St. Valentine's Day. And so I'm doing a video on that, and that should be out tomorrow, Wednesday, something like that, because I gotta cut them down. So my process. People also ask me about the process a lot of times. I'll shoot a video. It'll be 16 minutes or so long. And then I'll just drop it into an editor and cut a lot of that out, and then I'll put in royalty free frames and all that sort of stuff. And that's how that process goes, so to speak. And that takes hours. That's not an easy thing. Now I could just shoot a video like straight on and just pack it full of information and put it out there, but who wants to watch that? I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you're gonna sit and watch an 8-minute video, like let it be a story. You know what I mean? Like, let's find out the deeper meaning behind it. And I find that is what's impactful. And also, you can bring in, when you tell the story behind something, you can bring in so many of the competing ideas, because a lot of the content that I produce is rather controversial to some folks. Now, to scholars and to theologians and to people that have graduated from an accredited uh, seminary, or has an advanced degree in divinity or something like that. Um, the information that I put out there, it's not controversial. It's pretty known. Where it is controversial is for people who have been raised believing a certain thing, being told a certain thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So it becomes truth, but it's not necessarily fact. And there's a difference. You know what I mean? And so what I aim to do with my content is to bridge the gaps a lot of times and kind of bring people into, okay, I think about this way, but what are some other ways to potentially look at it and to make that history come alive? Yeah, I challenge some of the classes that I teach when I do live classes. When I first got to Wills for the first year, we were working with the church, and they wanted me to do a history of the Bible series, like the whole year, like go chapter by chapter in the Bible and talk about the history. And I was like, y'all, you sure about that? And they were like, yeah. It's like, all right, y'all are brave. So that's what we did. But one of the first questions I started the class off with was, if something is taught as true for 1,500 years, that's not true. But if it's taught as true for 1,500 years, is it true or is it false? And people obviously come back and they go, well, obviously that's false. Right. And I think that is what we what my content is kind of about, is to provide the background of things that a lot of us have received as true, and kind of unwind a little bit and say, okay, well, it's true, but it's not fact, and so, and then and then there's different, and then then the then it's learning to unlearn. So my process is, in the way that I come to insight that I talk about on here, is, and where it's challenging, especially for people that come from a fixed mindset, right? So you got fixed mindsets, you got growth mindsets. And it is a lot more complicated than that, but you got fixed mindsets, you got growth mindsets. Okay, so fixed mindset is, this is the way it works, this is the way it is, this is how it is, very black and white, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Growth mindsets are different. Growth mindset is the allowance of change, the allowance of growth, because growth is messy, right? Like birth is messy, growth is messy. No tree. I'm looking out at a bunch of trees out my window right now. Every tree grows different, right? But the fact of every tree and its root system is the same, but everyone is actually distinct. Everyone is actually different, right? So we all kind of bring our own lens to how we look at history. And there are some people that just cannot get out of that box that they have been raised in, to think of this is this and this is how it is and this is how it's always going to be. And they don't realize that they're actually missing out on a whole lot more stuff. It really weakens a lot of people, like when you're not taught the true history of the Bible, right? Like church, oh well, it's, God chose the books of the Bible, and that's why the way it is. And yeah, you can argue that, but the facts is that many men, determined collectively over the span of centuries what was going to go into the New Testament. I just did a video on this, there was a lot of politics behind what certain books went in, why certain books didn't get in, why certain books did, why certain books didn't. It doesn't take away from the holiness of the Bible, because that is something that we bring to the table, that the Bible is holy, right? That it has the stories of people's experiences of God in it, right? It's holy ground where I love to say it's holy ground where we all come take our sandals off and we meet to read and experience other people's understanding of God. But, man was never ordered, in the New Testament, to write this thing down. Like that's not how it worked. The Bible has evolved over centuries. It's like, well, God chose the books of the Bible. Which Bible? You've got the Orthodox Bible, you've got the Catholic Bible, you got the Eritrean Bible, you've got the Protestant Bible. Each one has different books. 66 books, 73 books, 81 books. And you've got this different. So if you're going to make that argument, then you have to say, then all of a sudden it becomes, well, 99 times out of 100, it forces that person to go, well, my version of the Bible is the one that's correct. And then all of a sudden that puts an uncomfortable lens in their face. And they're like, well, wait a minute. So you're telling me that as a Protestant, only my Bible is correct, but this Bible did not exist until 1535 or 1611. That sort of thing, and then it's like, oh, wait a second, what about the people that were around for 1,000 years before? So what are they all, like, are they all burning in hell? They're not. But if it's not the way I believe, it's wrong, and you're going to hell. And I think that is one of the largest weaknesses that believers have, is that when we are not taught the actual history of the Bible, and instead we're just taught that, hey, God picked this out. And when you find the actual history, you realize that you've been putting your faith in a book instead of who the book is about. And the Bible is I had a friend years ago put it to me a really good way. And when I heard them say this, they actually said it from stage, and it was like they were talking to me. I was like, oh my God, I think they were talking to me. And I was like, oh, dude, you just nailed it. You nailed exactly what I'm talking about. And this person for years, like they worked for this ministry, and they were in charge of picking up people from the airport for this ministry, all the guest speakers. That was their job, right? So they went and they picked up all these guest speakers. And so they would go and they would pick up these guest speakers, and they had never met them before, so they would be given a picture. And 50% of the time, they'd go to the airport and they'd look at this picture and they'd hold out the sign. They'd look at this picture and they'd hold out the sign. They'd look at this picture. They'd hold out the sign. They'd look at this picture. They'd hold out the sign. They'd look at this picture. They'd hold out the sign. They're so busy looking at the picture and holding the sign and picture holding and yada yada. The person would walk by them. They would miss him. And this is a big deal, because that's what we do a lot of times. So, look at the Bible, look at the Bible, look at the Bible, look at the Bible, look at the signs, 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 look at the Bible, over and 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 over. And we miss what it is that it's actually about. we miss the love of the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, love your neighbor as you love yourself, that sort of thing. And we're so focused and sin conscious. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Sin conscious, that we're so focused and we're so staring at it that we actually miss out on what it actually is about. And that is why I think a lot of times my content angers people. And it's okay. I'm a big boy. I got big boy pants. I'm not worried about the hate, and it's a thing that like people like miss it. And it's the same thing that happened with Pharisees, Sadducees, all these folks, and I don't like to say, oh, you're being a Pharisee. I don't like saying that because that's kind of anti-Semitic, because the Pharisees, there's a lot to respect about the Pharisees, a lot to respect about them. And I say that, and Christians get pissed because we've been so ingrained to hate Pharisees, right? But there's a lot to admire about them. I can cover that in a different video. I talk about it in my book a little bit. I'm not saying be like them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. But what happens is, Jesus said that, says, you search the scriptures, and I'm right here. You missed it. And that's when Jesus says, woe to you, Pharisees, woe to you, scribes. We love to think of it like a street preacher on the corner. Woe to you, Pharisees, woe to you, scribes. But one time I was reading that, and I actually, I read it, and something clicked in my brain, and instead of seeing anger, I saw hurt. Like woe. Like in the way that woe was used 2,000 years ago is different than the way we use woe now. And it's like there was like a lamentation in it, of Jesus, like, man, you are missing it. You are missing it. And so like I said, hey, this is my first live. Anybody that knows me in real life knows I go tangent. I can go like that. So I do apologize. I wanted to keep this more kind of on the personal side, because there's a lot of people that ask me like about what's my journey like? How did I come to be? And I'm dripping sweat, guys, just so you know. It's so hot outside. There's no AC. So, man, it's the way I look at it. We're all growing. I don't have it all figured out, right? A lot of people look at me and they're like, man, you got so much figured out, dude. The beauty is I wake up every day, and with everything I read, everything I digest, online, in a book, I got lots of books, right? But I always ask the question, what if this is wrong? Or what are the different angles to look at that? And I just train my brain to examine things that way. I train my brain to examine, like, what if our interpretation of this scripture is wrong? And I think what's really important is to, like, for instance, the video I just did on Mary Magdalene, right? Like, for 1,500 years, she was branded as a prostitute, which there's no indication in the Bible that she was that. In fact, she was a financial contributor to Jesus' ministry. She never abandoned Jesus. She was with him from the beginning. As soon as he cast out the 7 demons in Luke 8, she follows him, to the end. Even when the disciples abandoned them, she follows him. But yet she's branded as this prostitute, right? And even in movies like Passion of the Christ, movies like Risen, which if you've never seen Risen, that's a fun one. I think is it Ralph Fiennes, or is it the other Fiennes brother? That's a great movie. I mean, historically take it with a grain of salt, but it's a great piece because it covers some things that like looks at the crucifixion in a different way from the perspective of a Roman soldier. It's a lot of fun. I mean, like I said, it's kind of goofy historically, but it's a movie. Enjoy the movie, But even in that movie, like, Mary Magdalene is presented as this prostitute, right? And it's taught that she was a prostitute for 500 years until 1969, when the Vatican goes, hey, we were wrong about that, and they come out and they rescind it. but the damage has been done, and we've been taught for 1,500 years that she's a prostitute, right? So like this is kind of what I'm talking about. So where that video started was when I wasn't a Christian, like 20 years ago. Actually, 20, how old am I now? 25 years ago. And I was obsessed with religion. I was obsessed with faith. I had left Christianity, or what I thought was Christianity, which most people who say, I'm going to ruffle some feathers, I'm just being real. Most people that believe they are followers of the way, um, and I'm not saying that to judge anyone. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that, like, the normal Sunday morning Christian thing that a lot of people believe in, isn't might not be necessarily, like, and I'm not saying they're doomed to hell or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. So it's not an indictment on and then judgment on where they're going to spend eternity or anything like this. It's not that. It's just that I think that when most people actually find out what the heart of Jesus is really all about, it makes them ask very difficult questions to what they see on a Sunday morning. A lot of times, and I say that with all due respect. I say that in a lot of churches. I go to a lot, I speak in a lot of churches, and I straight up say it. It's not something that I hide from as far as my belief on that. Um, and I don't mean it as an indictment. It's just that most people don't even know that there is a deeper, more intimate, more Christianity. The way that as it was crafted for the first century for the first century church was a new way of relating to God. It was a new way of relating to a new identity of who they were, of what, and that's what enabled the church to grow even in the face of persecution. And you could make the argument historically that maybe persecution wasn't as bad as it was. It was bad still. People die. All right, let's be real. But it, that that type of belief is very different than the I'm going to go to church Sunday morning. I'm going to check the box. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. And then, during the week they do whatever and then repeat the process. And it's like, but like church, the ecclesia, the assembly, like who we are in Christ, like that was something that's lived every day. And it's not about morality. I mean, it's part of it, but like the morality is filtered through the heart. It's not a subset of rules that I place on myself and try to work within those rules and work really hard within those rules. It's about intimacy. It's about what's in the heart that comes out of the heart. Like from out of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's where action truly comes from. It's not implied things that you place on yourself. It comes from the heart, and the law, is written upon the heart. And the greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. So my personal path, what happened is I was raised in a very, very Christian home, very evangelical. My father is the greatest man I've ever met in my life. My dad is. I won the lottery with my dad. Like he is just. My dad is incredible. And at the time, he was working in a denominational church, and he was kind of like their next young gun. And he had a couple of churches that he oversaw, and he was like assistant to the general superintendent, of the conference that he was in, and he was like their next young gun, right? Like he was on this path to high status. So that's what I was raised in, and to me, that was just life. I didn't understand, and so my mom, she struggled with depression all of her life, all of her life. And she died uh, 12 years ago. And she struggled with depression all of her life. And my dad was in high demand, traveling all over the country. This is back in the 70s, early 80s, traveling all over the place, all over the country. dragging us with them half the time, going down to Mexico, going to, different places. And I just thought that was life. That was what I knew. I didn't understand any other way. And then when I was 6, my mom pulled me into her room one night, and she said, "Kenny, I just want you to know I love you, but I'm leaving, and I've got to search something else." And she left, and I didn't see her for a while and years. And my dad is, like I said, the greatest man I know. He's not perfect, but back in 1981, man, and I'm pushing 50, by the way, in case you guys didn't know. Back in 1981, they didn't create, programs for pastors and bishops and stuff like how to lead your family, like, like how to pastor your home, right? It was all about pastoring the church. It was all about succeeding in ministry. It was all about all these other things. And, mom, she just couldn't take that life. And she left. And my dad, to this day, my dad's still alive. He's still pastoring the church. He's non-denominational now. But to this day, 42 years later, I've never heard him say one bad word about my mom. He's, like I said, he's the greatest man I know. He's an incredible role model of what a father can be. And so I got a tough act to follow here with my kids. But anyway, but what happened is he was like the next young gun. But back in those days, um, you can't, you couldn't, um, you couldn't be a pastor or up in the conference and have a divorce for any reason. And so I remember the day my dad was he drove me. Obviously I was only kid, only child, so he had to take me with him wherever we went. And he went to this meeting, and I remember him telling me, he's like, "Kenny, life is about to be very different, maybe. So, just pray, pray for me in this meeting." And in this meeting, my dad's guys that were my dad's friends, um, basically took everything from him. And took everything. And they said he couldn't be a pastor anymore because he's divorced. Um, they basically took his license away. They took what's messed up is these guys that were in this meeting, some of them had actually stayed after my mom left, had stayed in our home because they lost their house. So we gave them a place to stay for like 6 months. So in this process, my dad lost everything. We lost everything. But he never gave up his faith, man. For like 2 years, like he became an itinerant pastor, and we drove all over the country, and he would preach. And when he would preach, he would also go into these meetings. He would have, these big meetings. And my dad, they call him, my dad's nickname is the walking concordance, right? And so he would go in, and he would like just go in and just rattle off, bam, 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 like the meanings of words, what words come from, how things break down, yada, yada, yada. Like he just has this memory where he just gets it, right? And I guess in a way he kind of passed that to me, but he just would just go into these meetings, and I would just sit there and watch him. So when other kids my age were going to Sunday school, I was learning about how the view of hell changed in the Bible, right? From Sheol to Hades to Tartarus to Gehenna, all this sorts of stuff. And like learning from like a super early age. And my mind just sucked it up. And I started asking him difficult questions about life and about faith. And 7, 8 years old, I remember the day we were driving to St. Louis, Missouri. My dad was speaking at my dad's friend's Rick Shelton's church. He had a really large church at the time. My dad was supposed to speak there. The Sheltons were really good friends. They still had a large church out in St. Louis. And we were going out there. My dad was supposed to speak, and I just sat through this whole thing on hell. And I asked him a question. I was like, how many sins does it take to go to hell? And Dad's like, one, This is back in the day, right? The idea has changed, it's just one, that's why Jesus came, to sacrifice himself for us. And so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So and I was like, all right, yeah, hi, that's cool. And then I was like, all right, so can you sin in heaven? And Dad's like, absolutely not. You can't sin in heaven. Heaven's the very definition of heaven being heaven is that you can't sin there. And I was like, okay, well then how'd the devil get thrown out, right? And it just remember him just like, did my 7-year-old son just ask me that question? But that's kind of where my brain always went. And oh, thanks so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's kind of where those questions started rolling. So what happened is I had this bitterness with church because we were in the small southern town, and now my dad can't pastor anymore, and because my mom left, and I lost my mom. Dad lost the church. She like literally at 6 years old, 6 to 8 years old, man, my entire world just crashed on me. And so I went look, and my dad was still always faith filled, still, I mean, just dad's amazing, and all the stuff. But I started. At 8 years old, I got a library card, and when I was a kid, like the safest place a kid could be was in the library. And there was a library; it was a couple of blocks from our house. And back in 1970 or 1983, nobody cared if an 8-year-old kid walked to the library. My dad was probably like, "Yes, go to the library," And so I would just go to the library and I would read. And I started reading. I started reading a lot of Roman mythology, Greek mythology. And the question popped in my head, we're taught these things are myths, right? Right. Yeah. Right. Well, they are, but we're taught these. But at the time of those people lived 2,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, they built palaces. They built all of these amazing things to these people, or to these gods that they believed in. They believed in it just as much as we believe in things now, building churches. And so I asked the question, okay, well, what made their beliefs different? So I was just obsessed with it. So I started diving deep into mythology. I was so obsessed with it, I started taking Latin. So in middle school, I took a bunch of Latin. And then in high school, like it just progressed, this obsession with religion. But by high school, I had completely begun to deconstruct. And this is back when there was no internet, so there were no resources, right? So basically it was just me in a library, and me. I was a kid with a library card. But one of my first jobs was working in a library. I just loved books. I loved reading, and I would read stuff, and it would get stuck up in my brain, right? And I just became obsessed with other faiths. I started, studying Buddhism, Hinduism, even though Hinduism's, it's horrible to say Hinduism as a religion, but if you were to, I say that for Western audiences. I've been to India a number of times, and I started studying like all these different faiths. And then by my late teens, I was actually moving deep into the occult. And by the time I was in college, and I was studying English Lit, my focus at the time, eventually I changed it to Middle English. I started studying Middle English as a language because Middle English is this is why I love linguistics, that Middle English is extremely different from modern English, Elizabethan English, and stuff like that. So I was just um, obsessed with British Romanticism because all the poets were, spirituality in the 16th, 17th century was growing, and people were, the scientific revolution was hitting. They were looking at Christianity different, and you had the Protestant Reformation, you had the Puritan Revolution, you had all this sort of stuff going on, all these types of conflict, and then you had the Romantic poets, and like Shelley and Byron and Keats and all these guys, and I was just obsessed. I was obsessed, and I was just just pulling all this in. By this time, I had become a published writer. I was writing for magazines. I was writing for journals and stuff like that. And and I was obsessed with the occult. And then because of different practices, I started getting deep involved, and actually a number of what people call secret societies and stuff like that began reaching out to me, and I was making connections, and so I actually joined quite a bit of them, and so a lot. What's funny is they're all worthless. I mean, a lot of people want to blame stuff on these secret societies. I'm like, nah. No, no. If you actually were a part, you'd be like, nah. But anyway, it's all a bunch of costume. Uh, but what happened is when I was 25, I realized at that point, with post grad and stuff like that, I was like, which I was focusing in on classics from around the Mediterranean, and going into deep church history. I wasn't Christian, but like studying church history. I was not an atheist. I was agnostic. I was definitely a believer. I believed in at that point in time. I called it the universe and all this stuff, and you could say I was a new ager if you want to call it that. Even though there's nothing new about the new age, and it's a whole different subject for a different time. But I was like, you know what? I don't want to go into. I don't want to teach anymore like that in a professor. I don't want to just deal with the politic. And so what I ended up doing, I opened a bookstore, and I opened a bookstore in the Bible Belt, and it was basically alternate religions. We worked with lots of pagans, we worked with lots of witches, we worked with lots of different folks like that. But we also did other religions like Islam, Sufism, like all that. It was basically it had a lot of stuff from Christianity and stuff like that. Like I just wanted to create like this repository of knowledge where people can come and talk, and that was an amazing experience. It's still like even though I'm of the faith now, I'd never do anything like that nowadays. But if I step outside myself and I look at how myself was then, I loved that. I loved it because it was people coming together, and we had hard rules. We had a room that was filled with couches and a big old, and it had a coffee machine, and people would come in and they would teach on their different faith tradition. And people would come in and they would all join, and they would actually learn about, you'd have people learning about what this type of witchcraft actually is, what this type of serial magic system is, what this type of belief system of Christianity, Christian mysticism, like all different types of stuff. And we had this, kind of an open forum, and people would talk. And I was like, the one thing you can't do is bash somebody else. You have to listen. And it was amazing. And I loved it. And that was one of the greatest experiences of my life, and it was fantastic. Obviously, I wouldn't do it now. Firm believer in Jesus, but then I had lots of questions. You know what I mean? And and I see you, Claire. And so with that, I have a passion for people that are involved in those types of things now. And why, if you watch my content, one of the things I am most proud of is that people of different faiths can come and they're like, dude, I'm actually learning something from you, and I don't feel condemned. Like I'm I'm feeling something, and those are the greatest comments I get. That people, those are the ones that I do it for. I'm telling you right now, that's what I do it for. I do it so people can go, wait a minute, Jesus isn't like this hateful person who's just ready to burn me to a crisp. He's not holding up this giant list of things I've done wrong. Because our God's a big God, and our God's a God of love. And so that's kind of why I do what I do, and on TikTok anyway. And so I had the bookstore for a while, then I left that, and then I kind of got lost for a while. I mean, I was already lost in my brain, like as far as like who I really was, And but what happened is I got in a bad accident, and so I basically tore my left leg to shreds, and I was on. This is back in 2001. So they were handing out OxyContin prescriptions like they were going out of style, like candy, right? Oh, you stubbed your toe, here's some OxyContin. And I shredded my left Achilles tendon, busted up my rotator cuff, had to basically, I was in a walking boot for a little over 9 months. And then there was learning how to walk properly again when I get tired. What's weird is when you get to know me, when I get tired and you're looking, when I get really tired, I start to limp because that comes back. That pain comes back a little bit from my Achilles injury. So I got hooked on painkillers, and I started doing really bad things with painkillers because they were just giving out painkillers left and right, you know. And at the time, I had a roommate. It was a girl. She worked at a club, and I didn't have a job. You know, I had to close the bookstore. Had to do all this stuff, and she was like, you know, you need money. You have a great voice. You love music. I love music. Some of you guys see my shirts and all that stuff. She's like, have you ever thought about DJing? And she was like, and the club I work at needs a new house DJ. And so I was like, oh yeah, that'll be fun because I love music, love mixing stuff, and all that sort of stuff. And so I became a DJ. And when you stick a drug addict into a club where he's taking a lot of pills, it got bad fast. And within a couple of years, I basically had a $50,000 cocaine habit. I was on every horrible drug known to man. I was an addict, and all my friends were addicts, and I was not a good person. And what scared me was I was high for 5 years every day. And I'm not talking about weed, I'm talking about hard drugs, um, chemical dependency. And it ended up, I had come out of a horrendous relationship, just awful. And I met my wife, and she was amazing. And she showed me who I could be. And at the time I met her, I was 129 pounds. I could not eat. Um, my heart sounded like it was going to explode out of my chest. Um, and I remember one day she gave me an ultimatum because I was not a good, I was I was an addict. And she gave me an ultimatum. She was like, I'm moving. She was like, you can either, basically come with me or stay here, but I'm not staying here and dealing with this. And I looked at her and I was like, I've got to move or I'm going to die. Um, and so I said, okay. And so I was like, well, if we move, we need to move to New Orleans because I need to get back to my spiritual roots, which at the time I thought was, um, uh, they just age restricted me because I'm talking about addiction. Sorry. Uh, I ended up having to, um, uh, well, I was like, let's move. I was like, I want to get back to my spiritual roots, which at the time I thought was the occult, which I thought was witchcraft and all that stuff, right? And so I was like, let's move to New Orleans, and I can sober up in New Orleans. I was like, if I can sober up in New Orleans, I can sober up anywhere. And so what I ended up doing was um, we ended up moving to New Orleans. I got very deeply involved in the spiritual community, quit hard drugs, cold freaking turkey. No therapy, no rehab, no nothing. A 5 year addiction to, no, at that point in time, sorry, 6 year addiction to painkillers, to cocaine, to meth, all that stuff. Quit cold turkey, and it was hell. Like for months, I'd say 9 months. Like I felt like I was insane. But got deeply involved with the spiritual community there, which was deeply involved in, like I said, I was involved in witchcraft and the occult. I had a podcast. I developed a podcast. I became a manager of a paranormal museum. I was working with a lot of the voodoo folks that were in New Orleans. A lot of them are still friends, even though they know that we are not of the same faith. What's funny is a lot of them still ask me for prayer, which is amazing, and a lot of the stuff. And while in New Orleans, with this podcast that I was doing at the time, back before podcasts were cool, I like to say, what ended up happening uh, is that I someone asked me and said, "Hey, can you do this TV show with us? Like, your research skills are like second to none, right? Like, we need somebody to do some research for this case that we have." And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And so we ended up doing this show, and it blew up on TV. It was on an episode. It was on Animal Planet of all of all channels. But this particular episode, like the ratings spiked. So the producer of the show got in touch, was like, "Dude, you're like, can let's do some stuff. Let's work together." So I started doing a bunch of other shows. So I started doing all this paranormal TV. All right. And so I became kind of like considered this expert, which I don't like terms like that. Expert. I don't like terms like that. I don't think you know what I mean. But but I was very familiar with like New Orleans lore and paranormal and spiritual and like I said, I owned a bookstore for years. I was involved with witchcraft and paganism and all that sort of stuff. And so I'm doing all this research for these shows. And he's like, "Man, we want you on some of these shows." And I was like, "All right, let's do it, man. Let's jump on." So I started doing all these paranormal reality shows. And if you type in my name, you can still find some. If you do a Google search, if my name, I know a bunch of you are going to the thing right now to do it. If you do a Google search of my name, most of them have been scrubbed because this is all like, this is back 2006, 2008, 9, 10, 11. So it's all up to 2011. And with that, with all of that, I was like, okay, you know, let you can find the stuff out there now. Like you can find these old episodes. And then what ended up happening is they ended up firing a guy from a very popular show, and they wanted to reboot the show with a younger cast, and they wanted me to be like the advisor for it, like the guy that they came to and got their research information. So I was kind of like the guy that would send them out on their mission, and when things got really bad, they would bring me in. That's kind of what the idea behind the reality show was, right? So at that time, my wife had become pregnant, and we had gone through a bunch of miscarriages, and so this was like a big deal. And we wanted to move from New Orleans and be closer to family, so we moved back to North Carolina at the time. Just so you guys know, the question always is, where are you originally from? There you go, North Carolina. And so that's where I spent a lot of my life. At that time, my wife was not a believer. She was like me. She believed in something. We just didn't know what. And what ended up happening, we got back to North Carolina. Hold on, this is horrible. There's a knock on the door. Hold on one second. And I'm back. Sorry about that. Um, so we got back, and I'm just gonna tell you guys a story. I don't want to take up too much time, right? But what ended up happening, and I can only give you my perspective on this. I can't give you my wife's perspective. My wife's perspective is a little bit different. It's the same story, but just the lens we all bring to it's a little bit different, right? But my wife is a fitness freak. So she is, number one, undoubtedly the most insanely incredible person I've ever met in my life. My wife is just wow. I mean, everything about her. And at the time, she had just got her yoga certification. She wanted to be a yoga instructor. My wife is a fitness trainer. She does like the less mile. She used to teach the less miles classes, beach body, all that sort of stuff. very solid diet, very crunchy. My wife doesn't even like to take Tylenol. She's had all four of our children without medical interventions. But she's what we call crunchy, right? She loves the granola. So we ended up moving back to North Carolina, and at 7.5 months pregnant, perfect pregnancy, nothing wrong. At 7.5 months pregnant, the day after the baby shower, the baby stopped moving in the womb, and this is back in 2010. And yeah, so we ended up going to the hospital. Now we were planning on a home birth. We weren't planning on yeah, we weren't planning on any hospital interventions or anything like that. Not that I'm against hospitals, but like I said, my wife's very crunchy, and myself being very averse to uh, things like painkillers and stuff like that. Like pharmaceutical stuff. Like we both are not. We're not. I'll go to the hospital. Yeah, obviously I've had numerous surgeries in my life, but that's just not our first choice. And so we were wanting a home birth. So to be told you've got to go in the hospital, something's very wrong with your baby. We go in the hospital, emergency C-section, and our son is born with no upper brainstem function. And basically, they said we were the one in a million that um, umbilical cord trauma is what they said it was. And it was the craziest thing. Like they were sending it. Like we had the hospital paid. We didn't pay for this. We had no money. We were broke as a joke at the time. But the hospital, because this was such a unique case, brought in these surgeons from all over the United States, these neurosurgeons to look at this child's brain, because they were like, man, this is like this is the case you read about, never ever happens. And and after 5 days of keeping him on life support, and he's wasting away to nothing. He has no, if he was off life support, he'd be dead. And they're like, look, there's nothing that we can do. And at the time, like I said, I didn't really believe in Jesus. You know what I mean? I didn't believe in the Holy Spirit. I believed in a God, but I thought I was more of a deist than anything else, like believing in the eternal clockwork. God set everything in motion, then step back and let it all crash. And with that in mind, that's kind of how I looked at things. Very nihilistic kind of idea, even though I believed in energy and flow and all this sort of stuff, in my brain. And uh, so we decided. So I thought it was important for the family, because my father, pastor, right? My father's pastor, and her family were all like worship leaders and missionaries, even though we were not Christian. We thought it was important for the family, um, to basically christen the baby before we took him off life support. And again, at the time, I didn't really believe in a heaven or a hell or anything like that. Um, but we just thought it was really important for the family. And and so we invited everybody down. I mean, they were already there anyway, but everybody came by. The hospital. We had been there for 5 days, man. 5 days in hell. Of watching this promise that you just been waiting. You know, just out of your hands. You can't do anything. And so we, at the time, we were like, let's take them off life support. So he took them off. So we had him. Chris and the family left the room. We took him off life support, and we held him in our arms. And our son died in our arms. And I remember she was holding him, and I had my arms around her, and kind of like this. And I remember, I remember this feeling, like I this feeling surrounded us. It was like the only way I can explain it is it seemed like the entire room, it was a cloud. It was like this cloud surrounded us, and the pressure was huge. It felt like we were being pressed together. And like even the noise of all the machines in the hospital room, it all vanished. It all disappeared. And this pressure just disappeared. Or this pressure just kept, the sounds disappeared, and this pressure just, and I just felt this pressure on us, but it wasn't hurt or sadness. It was love. Like I never experienced before in my life. And it was like pushing my wife and I together, and our child who was breathing his last breaths. And then all of a sudden, like our baby boy went, and the pressure, this pressure of love is what I call it. This presence just left. It just left. Like it left. It left the room. And our son's soul went with it. And I was rocked. Like, and it was weird because there was so much joy and so much love in this presence. And I know I look insane right now, and I don't care because this is how it happened. The love and the joy that was in that room. My wife and I both started laughing, like with tears of joy. Like we knew our son, who had been like wired into the system, was free. And my wife went nuts over it, like in a good way. Like she just went searching. She's like, you've experienced all these crazy things in your life with all this paranormal stuff and all this occult stuff, but you've never, and I've experienced it with you, but I've never seen anything like that with you. And I was the same way. I was like, I never felt anything like this in my life. I was like, this is insane. Like this beauty that I never, and we both just like went head deep. And she was like, I've got to find the source of this love. And so as this is going on, I got this TV show, right? That's calling me. They're like, hey, we need you in Indiana. And I'm like, look, my son just died. And they're like, and obviously they were stricken, they were just like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And they're sending all these flowers, and they start sending, and then they were like, what are your medical bills? And it was hundreds of thousands. And they were like, and some things were going to get paid for because we didn't have two dimes to our name at that point, because we were spending everything on this, and they were like, whatever you need, we're going to pay, but we need you to come do this show. Can you do it? And this was a couple weeks after, 2 weeks after. And I looked at my wife, and she was like, you got to go. So I went. And what's crazy is I get flown to Indiana. It's a flippin' blizzard. And this show is about this girl who is being tormented by demons. And so they bring us in, and how a lot of these shows work. Like, people ask me, are those shows real? Yeah, kind of. Some of the ones I've been on are real. Is there a lot of weird stuff going on sometimes? Yeah. But in this particular case, this girl believed she was being tormented by this demon, and I saw that she had, like, her family had like Bibles all over the house, and I wasn't Christian at this time. I knew I'd experienced something, but I wasn't Christian. And so I was like, well, they have obviously a belief in Jesus. I was like, so we gotta, this is the angle we need to go from. And the producer is very uncomfortable. He was like, because, these type of shows, merging it with Christianity on cable TV, it's like, that's pretty much a place that they don't want to go. You know what I mean? And I was like, this is the way we've got to do it. I was like, because are we here for a TV show? Or are we here for a family? They were like, you're here for the family. I was like, right. So we need this to anchor their faith in Christianity. So we've got to go with that. That's the angle we got to go from. So that's basically what the show became about, was like finding their faith in the face of all of this, right? And so that's what they filmed the show. They actually filmed the show that way. Now, the actual cut that made it to TV was very different. Doesn't make a lot of sense unless you realize that you cut out all the references to Jesus. And I'm like doing this. I'm like, dude, we're talking about Jesus a lot in this thing. And I was like, all right, what's going on? And at this point, that show didn't take off. I mean, they put the show on TV, had great reviews, but A&E wanted to go a different direction. So the producer's like, we want you to come up with the most terrifying TV show ever known to man, and we want you to do it. And I was like, this is what I've been working my whole life for, right? So like here I am at age 30, 37, 36, 37, and I'm being handed on a platter a TV show, and they're like, "You've got full total control. You get producer credit. Let's do a 3-year contract with this production company, as with Go Go Lucky Productions." And they were like, "You can, we're gonna do this, and we're pitching this to Sci-Fi." And I was like, "All right, let's do it." And so I basically came up with 36 episodes of the most terrifying show ever known to man. I'm glad I didn't do it because I probably would have gone insane. But anyway, we had the show that was going to go on TV, and at the time, I had been waiting. It kept getting delayed, and if you ever work in the TV industry, the delay is a part of life. It's constantly delay, delay, delay. And then when it all happens, it all happens fast. And so Sci-Fi bid on it, and they accepted it. So they flew me down to New Orleans. We shot an episode, flew me back. And meanwhile, my wife had started going to church. She had met some amazing divine appointments of people. They invited her to this church. She starts going to this church. And meanwhile, I'm putting together the most terrifying TV show known to man, and she's going to church. I didn't have a problem with that. I was like, that's fine. Like, you do if you want to find faith in that, you can find faith in that. I've been down that road. I'm not doing it again. And then she starts inviting me to church. I'm like, all right, yeah, I love my wife. One thing that you will find out about me if you are around me more than 5 minutes is the adoration that I have for my wife. And so I'm like, all right, you want me to go? You've been right about a lot of things in my life. It's like, with the drug addictions and this and that and the other. I was like, all right, I'll go with you to church. So I went with her to church, and, a lot of the stuff that I saw was stuff that I saw growing up. And I knew the mind games, and I knew all that sort of stuff. But, I was like, these people really believe, and I knew a lot about, it's weird, like when you have a background in something, religion wise, up here, okay, because you think you know everything, right? Or not everything, but you know a lot. You think you know more, right, than the average person. But it's about this. It's not about this. All right? It's about this. And going in there, and I'm watching all the stuff, right? And I'm watching all the stuff. I'm watching, yada yada, and I'm okay with it, and she, and I'm okay with her going to church, and I'm like, all right, let's do it, and I start coming with her, and I love the community, right? Because we didn't have a lot of community at the time, and so we love the community. She's getting involved, and finally one day she's like, I want to become members of the church. And at that point I was like, hold on now, like, members, that means, this, that, or the other, so I was like, and she was like, look, this is what I feel like I need to do. And I was like, man, I love my wife. I was like, you know what, I'm going to support this. I was like, these people are going to lose their mind when I come out with this TV show, though. What are they going to do? And it was weird. It was like, I was like between two worlds. And so so I'm going to tell you guys how I met Jesus. All right. So here we go. This is what everybody's been waiting for. And so what ended up happening is she said she wanted to get baptized. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. But baptism is a public declaration of faith, and I don't even know if I really believe in this anymore. I grew up in this system, um, and I was like, Jesus is amazing, God's amazing. I was like, I'm not comfortable with with baptism. I was like, and I got a TV show starting, and about this subject, and I, I'm gonna feel like horrible, like feel like I'm living a lie to these people if I go in that baptism tank. You know what I mean? And like come out, oh Jesus, and then I go do this show about all this other stuff, right? And she goes, okay. She's like, honey, I really want you to pray about it and let me know what you decide. And so I was like, all right, Lord. I was like, God, if you obviously I believe in God. You know that. And this is my prayer, right? I need to give you the inside scoop on my prayer. I was like, God, I love you guys. I love you. I love the idea of who Jesus is. I was like, historically, I don't know if that matches up. I was like, but I love the idea of who Jesus is. This is my brain then. Okay, not now. It's my brain then. And I was like, and I know how this has been twisted and this has been done and da da da. And I was like, I don't even know. Like, I was like, if you're real, I need you to show me. Right? I did that one. If you're real, I need you to show me. And so I did something that you're not supposed to do. I said, and I'm not saying do this because it might not work for you. It worked for me. Don't. This is not a. This is not a. Be like me thing. Okay. I'm talking about the past there, Chauncey Burt. As I stated. Um, what's funny about TikTok? I'm going to put this out there, and I'm not directing this at you, man. This is funny on TikTok. This is what's funny I've noticed about these things, videos. Once something goes out of my mouth and goes into somebody's ear hole and gets cut with all of their stuff, something comes out that is so different. Like in the same video, I've been accused of being a Jehovah's Witness, a Calvinist, a Seventh day Adventist, a Republican, a Democrat. Like, it is the most amazing thing. It's just like wow, like really, like you take this, like go back and watch the video again. Anyway, so I'm like, all right, man, like like God. I was like, if you so don't, this is not a formula. All right, don't do this. All right, because what I did, yeah. But I said, God, if you're real, I need you to show me, or I'm going to become the biggest enemy you ever had. Don't do that. All right, but that's what I said. And I remember saying that I was like, if you think I'm bad now, because I was the guy that Christians didn't like. I was the guy that I've been accused of the Mormon thing a lot. Yeah, but I was the guy that if let me put it this way, that if you were a Christian and you came into contact with me and you tried to start debating me, I I would tear you apart. And that was, I had a reputation for that. But if you were a Christian and you came around to me and you actually wanted to talk about your faith, I loved it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I loved it. All right. This is in the past. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. But if you came with that overarching trying to beat with the Bible thing, that didn't fly, and because I you know I love the Bible, even when I wasn't a Christian. I loved it, and so, and I knew it well, and I'd studied it, in professional settings, and so I was just like, I said, God, I was like, I'm going to be the biggest enemy you've ever had. Completely stupid, and I'm happy that God loves me in my ignorance. Um, and what ended up happening, I was like, all right, I'll do this baptism thing. And so my wife, it's this church thing, right? And she goes into the baptism. My wife is so cool, man. My wife is a BA boy. She is just awesome all the way. And she comes rocking up out of that baptismal pool with her hand up in the air, like, yeah. And everybody's cheering. Our parents are there. Everybody's there, right? And I'm after her. And so I'm like, all right, fine. And I walk up to the baptismal pool, get in, get dunked, come out. I'm expecting heaven to part. I'm expecting the dove to descend upon my shoulder. All that sort of stuff. Idiocy, ignorance, um, arrogance, and a lot of arrogance. I was very arrogant, very, very arrogant human being. I got this TV show getting ready to start. I think I know everything. And I sit down in that water and I come up out of that baptismal pool. Nothing happened. All it was cold, wet, and all these people are yelling and clapping for me. And I felt like the biggest fraud, faker, fool on the planet. And I go change clothes and I'm sitting down and everybody's coming up and slapping me on the back and all this stuff. And I'm like, I was devastated because I really wanted something to happen. And nothing had happened. And I sat down. And this is the part that people have a hard time with. And this is the part where people that only operate from a logical perspective have issue with. But I'm just going to tell you what I saw. And I'm going to tell you what happened to me. And if you don't believe me, I don't care. Don't care. And what had ended up happening was I sat down in this big church, about 1,000 people. And I sat down in this chair and I'm just devastated. And my wife's family is clapping her on the back and all this stuff's happening. And I sat there and all of a sudden the room went black. Like, you know how, I don't know if any of you have ever blacked out before. And sorry about the sweat, guys. This humidity is woof. And all of a sudden, the world went like that. And over to my right, this white light appeared. It's brighter than anything I'd ever experienced before. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I felt this wave hit me. And I felt that presence that I had felt in the room when my son died. And he stood next to me and I looked at him and I saw him. And I smelled him. He was real. It smelled like cedar, musk, and myrrh. And I will go to the end of the universe knowing that this happened to me. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't care how many people out there think I'm crazy. I don't care how many people out there think I'm nuts. I don't care. I don't care. And that standing next to me. And I heard his voice. And I saw his hands. And I heard him say, he reached across. And I don't know if you guys, I describe it like this. You guys ever have a grandpa and he had that old school the vinyl thing of photos in his wallet he would pull out and he'd have all his grandkids on it, right? I describe it like that. And I saw his hand reach across in his arm, in his scar, pull out this big long list of pictures. But on these pictures, they were moving pictures, and they were all these times in my life where I felt agony, where I felt pain, like I felt rejection, where I felt loss, where my mom had left me, where kids in school, where my dad, everything my dad had was taken from him, where all these kids, this just horrible life that I thought that I had had, these times of loneliness where I sat in the library all by myself, thinking that like nobody loved me, nobody cared, where I felt rejected, where I'd be alone by myself all day long, like all these horrible things, these failed relationships in my life, where I lost my businesses, where I had horrible things happen, my accidents that I had, all these horrible things that had happened, and then there's the death of my son, and then I hear the Lord said, I never wanted any of this for you. And I heard his voice crack, and the pain that he had in his voice, and he experienced those things with me. When he had experienced those things as me, because I am in him and he is in me, and as he is in this world, so am I. And so many mysteries of the universe open up to me at that point in time. And then he was gone, but that feeling remained. And I fell out of my chair, and I landed on the floor, and my life has never been the same ever since, because this is the thing. When you have an experience like that, you can either go back to life as it was and lie to yourself for the rest of your life, or you give your life totally to it. And that's what my wife and I did. And we went in the deep end. And we became those believers. I don't even want to use the term Christian. But I mean, I am a Christian. But those believers, we became those believers that freaked the other believers out. Because to us, it wasn't about a Sunday thing anymore. It was about completely giving your life over. And that's what we did. And I'm not saying it was easy. I'm not saying that there weren't a lot of bumps and bruises. There still are bumps and bruises. And I'm not saying that there's a lot of crazy things that didn't happen along the way, because there are. But we dedicated to our lives to living an extraordinary life, not just talking about it, but being. And it has led us all over the world. I've been in neo-pagan temples cut in the mountains, loving and talking civilly people that are involved in the New Age movement, witchcraft, paganism, whatever you want to call it. I've sat there and been in these places with them because I've been them, and I can share with them. I've been in the with drug addicts going on days of no sleep, washing their feet. I've been with prostitutes, like bringing them into our charity, like feeding them, like no judgment, prophesying who God says they really are over them. I've been in the temples of places in India, giving honor to the people that are there, like because they don't know any other way, and not challenging who they are, not saying I cast you out in the name of blah 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 and all that gross stuff, but just loving who they are and letting them see Jesus. I've been on the mountaintops of mountains in Cuba, drinking tea with people that supposedly have killed missionaries, and just loving them and blessing their home and who they are. And now they lead children's ministries all over Cuba. God is real. He is real to me. He's the most real thing in my life. I have no, and I don't dive into this stuff this much. That's why it just breaks my heart when people cannot see through the framework of their belief to get to who their belief actually is in. because Jesus is more than Christianity. Jesus is more than a figure in a book. You cannot contain who God is in a book. The book can help lead you. It can help you understand people's understanding. It is holy to me. It is inspired, but it's not the end all be all. So when I see people try to quantify their life through their rituals and through their rules, you're missing it. You're missing it. You're missing the love, the joy, the peace, the happiness. If you are not waking up in the morning with a smile on your face because you get to live and be an expression of Jesus' love, you're doing it wrong. He is so much more than what we believe. The Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, is so much more than what we believe. But as He is, so are we in this world. Who is He to you? Who is He to us? And if you want to live your life trying to get everybody to follow your stinking rules, Jesus has something to say about that if you just open your eyes and read the stuff in red. I am passionate about this. I am passionate about what Jesus wants to reveal in this world. This is why I write the books the way that I do. The version of me that you understand through TikTok is very different because my mission on TikTok is different. My mission on TikTok is to be an expression of His love and to help people understand that the rules and the rituals in which they place themselves, you are placing yourself in the box. You are not placing God in a box. You are putting yourself in a box. The rules are important. The law is important. All of this stuff is important. But if you are moving outside of His character, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control of the fruit of the Spirit, you're missing it. And I have to tell you, I lived a life studying all of this stuff. I lived a life understanding all the rituals and the rules of all these different religions. But there is one thing that Jesus offers that no other faith does: love, acceptance, peace, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. If you want to go with the Catholic version, charity. Okay? Because they actually technically have 12 fruit of the Spirit. Protestants have 9. What I'm saying is this. You and I, we can agree to disagree on a lot of things. But I choose to come together with you over where we agree. And that's Jesus. Jesus. He's the way, the truth, and the life. Not the rules. Not the rules. And if you allow yourself to read the stuff in red, to pull it inside, realize who He is writing, who He is saying these things to in the Gospels. That was the biggest thing clicker with me, is when I realized who He is speaking to, and to realize like that people say, oh, this can be applied to everything. What is each part of the Bible? The best way to read the Bible for me has been to my thing, and I've got to jump because this thing's gone on for a long time. The best thing for me is to realize the audiences to whom He is writing. Yes, what is in the Bible? Yes, it's good for all of us. It's good for learning and teaching and da-da-da-da-da. Yes, I'm a firm believer in the Bible. Don't let what I say come out of my mouth go into your ear hole and get cut with all that garbage, okay? just hear me right now, okay? The Bible's important. The Bible's not God. It's not Jesus. The Word of God, the Logos, eternal, everlasting, Jesus. The Bible is a structure, a creation that was created hundreds of years after He lived. It is a way to understand Him. Okay, is a way to understand. If you hear Jesus say something and it's not kind of like backed up by what's in His words, problem. That ain't Jesus. but what I'm saying is this: don't get so busy looking at that and looking at the signs and looking at this and looking at the signs, looking at this, looking at the signs, looking at this, looking at the signs, that you actually miss what it's all about. Jesus said to love one another as we love ourselves. And the problem with most of us is we don't love ourselves. Yes, said it. Jesus loves you. When God looks at you, evangelicals love to say, when God looks at you, he sees Jesus. That's how he sees. He sees Jesus. That is not scripture. God sees you. And if the worth of something is established by the price that is paid for it, then heaven paid the ultimate price for you. You're not worthless trash. You're not garbage. You're not a wretch. You never were. Because God didn't die for trash. And he didn't come back for trash. He came back to show you. He came back to show you who you really are, the child of God. So guys, I love you. You're amazing. My first live, this went way off the rails, and I actually started preaching, so apologies. But I want to tell you guys, you're amazing. You guys on TikTok, you've changed my life. You've changed my life. You have. 250,000 followers. Never in a million years, man. I had no idea. No idea. But you guys are amazing. So thank you. You're awesome. I got a post about St. Valentine's Day coming out tomorrow or the day after. Check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Giving you the background on St. Valentine, who he actually was or may have been. There's actually a couple of St. Valentines, as well as the pagan belief system that it was kind of designed to replace, and in some ways got integrated with throughout the years. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. So yeah, celebrate St. Valentine's Day. It is a commercial holiday, but just celebrate it. There's no harm in it. Celebrate the ones that you love. They're worth it. You guys are worth it. You're awesome. Love you. See you later.